You should not follow most pieces of traditional financial advice. Some are outdated, some are aggravating, and some, I will say, are flat out wrong. And no traditional advice, by the way, is gonna help you if you're on a quest to retire early, like me. Since most of us didn't learn about personal finance growing up, we got our financial know-how either from our parents or from this traditional advice. Advice that might be decades old, kind of like your parents. Oh, that was kind of a low blow. I am totally just kidding. I am actually several decades old as well. But today I'm going to cover a variety of financial advice or rules of thumb and give you my thoughts as to why it might be bad advice and what you should do instead, especially if you want to retire early. Why am I qualified to give better advice? Well, I've written this book and this one, and I actually just updated this one. Each of these has 101 tips or pieces of financial advice. And I'm approaching, by the way, 100 finance videos here on the channel. I put out 2 videos a week, so if you want to see more like this, definitely consider subscribing. I nerd out about this stuff, and over the years, the more I've learned, the more I've realized it's traditional advice that is actually holding many people back. So I'm gonna tackle this list today, fast and furious. Starting with the 50-30-20 rule of thumb. So the 50-30-20 rule says that you should spend 50% of your money on needs, 30% of your money on wants, and 20% of your money you should save. Worse, even simpler advice is that you should save 10% of your income. 10% is not enough. Heck, 20% is not enough if all you do is save it. Don't just save 20%. Instead, I recommend you invest 20% and save 10%. To do so, you're gonna have to reduce your needs and your wants by 5% each. So I recommend 45% on needs, 25% on wants, 20% invested, 10% saved. We're gonna call this the 45, 25, 20, 10 rule of thumb. That doesn't have a nice ring to it. Once you've built up, by the way, an emergency fund or hit a savings goal, like let's say a down payment for a house, then you could raise your investing to 25% and reduce your savings by 5%, or maybe even 30% invested, 0% saved. Now, if there's one thing I do like about the 50-30-20 rule of thumb, it's that it forces you to think about savings in terms of a savings rate. How much you save as a percentage to how much you earn. Focusing on your savings rate means you'll always increase your savings as you increase your income. Number 2, you should have X amount saved by a certain age. There are so many articles and videos out there explaining where you should be in terms of saving and investing by age if you want to retire on time or even early. It can be okay, I think, to, sort of benchmark where you should be at, but I don't know many people that when they get this information are actually where it says they should be. And perhaps seeing how far off you are might actually be demoralizing and make you want to give up altogether. If you can't catch up, why even try? Because you could just never retire, right? Work until the end of your life. Wrong. You can change your financial life at any age on any income. It just takes education, commitment, and hard work. And by the way, who's to decide where you should be at anyway? Personal finance is personal and looks different for everyone. We all have unique circumstances. And honestly, I even feel a little bit bad when I say here on the channel, my goal is to save half of my post-tax income. Save and invest half, retire twice as fast, I say. I realize that this could actually make other viewers out there feel bad about saving 10% or even 20%. I am not here to discourage you. I'm here to encourage you and show you that if I can do it, I know you can do it too. I want to educate and motivate because a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that's relevant here. Do your best, then try to do a little bit better tomorrow. That's all each of us can do. Don't go looking for bad news and see how far off you are. Keep learning instead. Keep increasing your savings rate a little bit at a time instead. Number 3, don't invest until you're completely out of debt. On the surface, this one is actually a really simple rule to follow and isn't terrible advice, but there are so many kinds of debt. Instead, I would modify this to say, don't invest until you're out of credit card debt. Now, I don't really buy into the idea of good debt personally, and maybe, who knows, I might change my mind, as I get older, but I will say that credit card debt is right up there with the worst kinds of debt that you can have. If you have credit card debt accruing interest, generally between 15 and 20%, pay that off before you consider investing. After that, I fully encourage you to learn about investing and start investing young. This could be far more lucrative in the long term. Let's talk about student loan debt versus investing. If you have, let's say, $50,000 in student loan debt accruing 5% interest, you might hesitate to invest. However, if you do invest in the total stock market or an S&P 500 mutual fund, you should earn, historically speaking anyway, 7 to 9% on average based on over 100 years of market data to rely on. Compounded over time, your investments can grow into a huge pot, especially if you start young. Always pay the minimum required towards your debt and absolutely create a debt payoff plan, but don't tell yourself you're gonna learn how to invest and deal with that in the future. If nothing else, I'd say invest a small amount now. Contribute, for example, at least to the company match with your 401k while paying off your debts. Then when you're debt free, you're gonna be experienced and have knowledge and be ready to dive right into the investing waters. Number 4, renting is throwing away money. You should always buy. This one's a bit of a controversial one that's likely gonna lead to, I think, some hate in the comments, and that's okay. Any comments are good for the old algorithm. But first, a fun fact here. CBS News reported that from 1890 to 2005, inflation-adjusted home prices rose just 103%, or less than 1% a year. Despite that, I do know that real estate can be an excellent investment. In the long run, owning a home or rental homes is a great way to scale your net worth in most cases. The problem is, though, that most people forget that your home is also an ongoing expense. And I don't want to harp on, the cons of ownership, and there are many, like these ongoing expenses that last practically forever. Instead, though, I want to offer a different perspective about renting, the financial pros, especially if you desire early retirement and freedom. Now, while renting doesn't add to your net worth directly, it does give you lots of flexibility to, for example, move and live wherever you want, including areas with lower cost of living. Plus, renting provides flexibility to reduce your monthly payment by living with a partner or a roommate. It might also allow you to live in a neighborhood, for example, that you couldn't afford to buy in. And the best part, perhaps, is that you don't have to fix anything if it breaks or pay out of pocket. Not to mention, by buying, you're likely sinking most of your life savings into that down payment, money you could have otherwise used to invest. So if buying is going to keep you out of investing from 5, 10, 15 years or more, it may not be worth it, as it could potentially delay retirement as you miss out on compound interest. And while I'm on my soapbox, let's stop using the phrase starter home. This does so much damage, because what most people don't realize is that nearly all the money you pay towards your mortgage in, let's say, the first 5 years is actually going directly to interest. It's the amortization schedule that a lot of people don't understand when they buy their first home. So if you're going to buy, please only buy if you intend to live in that house for 15, 20 years or more to actually build some equity. Now, the truth is, owning and renting both have their pros and cons financially and otherwise. So you shouldn't feel shame if you rent. To buy or to rent is a very personal and individual decision. So if you're a renter like me, don't feel like you're falling behind your peers that are buying or disappointing your parents who are pressuring you to buy. Number 5, you should keep a balance on your credit cards. This one doesn't directly relate to retirement or early retirement. I have to bring this one up because it drives me crazy. I have no idea where this concept comes from, but it's flat out wrong. People think it's good to have a balance on their credit cards because they think it's going to improve their credit score. But here's the fact. Amounts owed relative to the limits available to you makes up 30% of your credit score. The lower the utilization, the better. A $0 balance across all of your credit cards is best for 2 key reasons. It means, number 1, you're not accruing interest each month, and number 2, it's going to improve your credit score. In fact, paying down debt is one of the best and easiest ways to raise your credit score. I personally love chasing rewards and points, and I use my credit cards to make most purchases, but I always pay them off in full each month. So please, if you take nothing else away from this video, take away this point. Always pay off your credit cards in full each month, whether you're chasing early retirement or not. Let me know what you think of these rules of thumb that I covered today. I could have honestly made a video about each of these topics, so I'm really just scratching the surface with some of my thoughts. I'd also love to know though if there are any other pieces of financial advice that you think are outdated, or any advice that you follow that is less than traditional that works well for you. If you enjoyed this video, of course, and my approach to thinking about personal finance, do me a huge favor and hit that like button before you exit here. It genuinely helps out me and the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and tune in this Friday. I am super pumped to share my next video with you guys. I don't want to give anything away, but it's personal. It's sort of an announcement, I guess. It's awesome, and it is sure to brighten your day. My name is Frankie. This is The Money Resolution. Thanks as always for watching until the end. I'll see you all on the next one.